Some moments burn themselves into your memory so clearly that decades can't blur them. This is one of those moments. And I've carried this story in silence for over 50 years. Not because I was sworn to secrecy, but because I knew nobody would believe it. Not the way it actually happened. Not the way it changed everything I thought I knew about strength, about fighting, about what it means to be truly powerful. But now, with social media turning every beach confrontation into viral content, with everyone claiming they knew Bruce Lee or trained with him or witnessed his secret fights, I feel compelled to tell the truth, the real story, because this wasn't about martial arts mastery or one-inch punches or flying kicks. This was about something deeper, something that would redefine everything those 5 surfers thought they knew about power. It was late spring, 1972. The California sun hung high over a stretch of coastline that Bruce preferred to keep nameless. He had maybe 3 or 4 spots like this along the Pacific Coast Highway. Hidden gems where the crowds couldn't find him, where he could escape the suffocating weight of fame that followed him everywhere since the Green Hornet made him a household name. I was 24 then, working as a photographer for a small magazine that covered the emerging martial arts scene. I'd been documenting Bruce's training sessions for months, but on this particular day, we weren't there for work. Bruce had invited me simply as a friend. Come, he'd said the day before. I need to remember what quiet sounds like. The drive up the coast had been silent except for the engine's hum and the wind through the open windows. Bruce wore simple clothes, dark swim shorts, a plain white t-shirt, flip-flops. Nothing that would draw attention. He'd mastered the art of becoming invisible when he needed to, a skill more valuable than any fighting technique in 1972 Hollywood. When we reached his secret spot, Bruce stood at the edge of the cliff for a long moment, just breathing. The beach below stretched maybe half a mile in each direction, bookended by rocky outcroppings that created natural privacy. 20 feet of white sand separated the cliff from where the Pacific rolled in with hypnotic consistency. You know what I love about the ocean? Bruce said as we made our way down the narrow path. It doesn't care who you are. Movie star, martial artist, nobody, the waves treat everyone the same. They just keep coming, patient, persistent, reshaping everything they touch. There were maybe a dozen people scattered across the beach. A family with young children building sandcastles near the water. An elderly couple walking hand in hand. 3 surfers out in the lineup, waiting for sets, their boards dark silhouettes against the afternoon light. We found a spot near some driftwood, far enough from others to have privacy, but close enough to feel part of the peaceful scene. Bruce spread out a towel and sat down, closing his eyes and tilting his face toward the sun. This is what I miss most, he said quietly. Just being, not performing, not proving anything. Just existing in a moment. I'd seen Bruce in many states, intense during training, focused on set, philosophical during our long conversations about martial arts theory. But this version was different. Vulnerable, almost. The weight he usually carried in his shoulders had melted away. We'd been sitting there for maybe 20 minutes when I noticed them. 5 guys walking down the beach from the north, surfboards under their arms, wetsuits half unzipped and hanging around their waists. They moved with that casual confidence that comes from years of reading waves and wrestling with ocean power. Broad shoulders, sun-weathered skin, shaggy hair bleached by salt water. The one in front was clearly the leader. Maybe 6'3", probably 200 pounds of lean muscle built by paddle battles and wave rides. His board was a classic single, fin longboard, worn and dinged from use, real surfer, not a weekend warrior. At first they were just passing by, talking among themselves about waves and tides. But then one of them, a younger guy with bleached blonde hair, nudged the leader and pointed in our direction. Dude, isn't that the kung fu guy from TV? The leader stopped walking and squinted at us. Recognition dawned slowly across his face, followed by something that looked like amusement. Well, I'll be damned, he said loud enough for us to hear. It is. Bruce didn't open his eyes, but I saw his jaw tighten slightly. He was aware, cataloging the situation without appearing to engage. The 5 surfers approached our spot, forming a loose semicircle around us. The leader planted his board in the sand and crossed his arms. Hey there, kung fu, he said, his voice carrying that particular blend of false friendliness and challenge that precedes trouble. Enjoying the beach, Bruce opened his eyes slowly and looked up at him. No anger, no defensiveness, just quiet observation. It's a beautiful day, he said evenly. The surfer grinned and glanced back at his friends. Sure is. Perfect waves too. We've been out there all morning, testing ourselves against the real power of nature. You know, actual force. Not that choreographed movie stuff. One of the others, a stocky guy with a thick beard, laughed. Yeah, man. No offense, but when you're facing down a 12-foot wall of water, all that fancy footwork doesn't mean much. Bruce stood up slowly, brushing sand from his shorts. He was easily the smallest person in the group, maybe 5'7", 135 pounds compared to their 6 feet and 200 plus. The size difference was almost comical. You're right, Bruce said quietly. The ocean is incredibly powerful. I have great respect for anyone who chooses to challenge it. The leader seemed surprised by the agreement. He'd been expecting defensiveness, maybe some tough guy posturing. Instead, he got genuine respect. It threw off his rhythm. Well, he continued, the thing is, my buddies and I were just talking, and we've got this question. Is Kung Fu actually real, or is it just movie magic? Because no offense, man. But you don't look like you could handle a real fight. I mean, any one of us could probably take you without breaking a sweat. The youngest of the group, maybe 19 with freckles and nervous energy, shifted uncomfortably. Dude, maybe we should just… Nah! The leader cut him off. I'm curious. We spend our time dealing with real forces, waves that could kill you if you mess up, currents that could drag you out to sea. This guy makes movies where he kicks 20 guys and they all fall down neat and tidy. I want to know if any of it's real. Bruce looked at each of them, taking their measure. I'd seen him do this in training, reading opponents, cataloging their strengths and weaknesses, their tells and vulnerabilities. But there was something different in his expression now. Not the focused intensity of a fighter, but something closer to sadness. Why does it matter to you whether it's real or not? Bruce asked. The question caught them off guard. The bearded surfer laughed nervously. What kind of answer is that? An honest one? Bruce replied. You came over here with a question, but I don't think you're really asking about Kung Fu. You're asking about something else. The leader's smile faded. You think you're some kind of philosopher. Dude, I'm asking if you can actually fight or if you're just another Hollywood fake. And I'm asking why that matters to you. The tension was building now. The playful mockery was hardening into something more serious. The leader stepped closer, using his size to intimidate. It matters because I hate fakes. I hate people who pretend to be something they're not. We're out here every day, earning our respect from the ocean, taking real risks, getting worked by waves that could break every bone in our bodies. And you're on TV pretending to be some kind of warrior. It's insulting. Bruce nodded slowly. I understand. You feel like I'm claiming something I haven't earned. Exactly. So what would it take to prove to you that I've earned it? The surfer's eyes lit up. This was what he'd been building toward. Show me. Right here, right now. Prove that Kung Fu isn't just movie bullshit. The young surfer with freckles stepped forward. Come on, guys. This is stupid. Let's just go surf. But the leader was locked in now. Pride and ego had taken over. He couldn't back down in front of his friends. No, I want to see this. I want to know if the legend is real, or if it's all Hollywood smoke and mirrors. Bruce was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the ocean. When he spoke, his voice was soft, almost sad. You know what the ocean taught me when I was learning to surf in Hong Kong? That force doesn't always look like force. The most powerful waves are often the quietest ones. They don't announce themselves with foam and noise. They just come, steady and inevitable, reshaping everything in their path. Is that supposed to be some mystical Kung Fu wisdom? The bearded surfer asked mockingly. It's just truth, Bruce said. But if you really want to know whether Kung Fu is real, I'll show you. But I need you to understand something first. Fighting isn't about proving who's tougher. It's about understanding forces, how they work, how they flow, how they can be redirected. The leader was grinning now. Sounds like you're stalling. I'm preparing you, Bruce said. Because what I'm about to show you might challenge everything you think you know about strength and power. The 5 surfers formed a loose circle around us. Other beachgoers had started to notice the commotion, but they kept their distance. The family with children moved their blanket further away. Here's what's going to happen, the leader said. I'm going to throw one punch, just one. If you can deal with it, I'll admit Kung Fu is real. If you can't, you admit it's fake and we post this whole thing on social media so everyone knows. I felt my stomach clench. This was 1972, no social media yet, but the threat of public humiliation was just as real. If Bruce failed here, word would spread through Hollywood. His reputation, his career, everything could be damaged. Bruce looked at him calmly. One punch. But I'm not going to fake it or pull it. I'm going to throw it like I mean it. And if I handle it without hurting you? The surfer laughed. Without hurting me? Dude, you're half my size. I'm not worried about getting hurt. Bruce's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around him. Subtle, almost invisible, but I felt it. Like the moment before lightning strikes. All right, Bruce said quietly. One punch. But I want your friends to understand what they're about to see. This isn't magic. It's not mystical. It's just physics and timing and 30 years of training. The leader rolled his shoulders and brought his hands up into a basic boxing stance. For all his surfing background, he clearly had some fighting experience. His form was decent, his balance solid. You ready, Kung Fu? He asked. Bruce just stood there, hands at his sides relaxed open, completely vulnerable looking. He might have been waiting for a bus. Whenever you're ready, he said quietly. The surfer threw the punch. It was faster than I expected from a man that size. A straight right hand aimed directly at Bruce's face, full power behind it, no hesitation. The kind of punch that could put someone in the hospital. What happened next unfolded in a kind of slow motion that my memory has preserved with perfect clarity. Bruce moved. Not dramatically, not with the exaggerated motions you see in movies, just a small shift of his upper body, maybe 6 inches to the left. The punch sailed past his face, missing by the width of a breath. But Bruce wasn't just evading. As the surfer's fist passed by, Bruce's left hand came up and made contact with the punching arm. Not a block, not a deflection, something more like guidance. His hand barely touched the surfer's forearm, but somehow that gentle contact redirected the entire force of the punch. The surfer's own momentum carried him forward and to the side, his balance broken, his body twisted into an awkward position. And in that moment of vulnerability, Bruce acted. His right palm struck the surfer in the back of the shoulder. Not hard, not a devastating blow, but perfectly placed and perfectly timed. The impact sent a shockwave through the bigger man's nervous system. His legs buckled, his coordination scrambled, and he went down hard, face first into the sand. The whole sequence took maybe 2 seconds. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. The other 4 surfers stared at their leader lying in the sand, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. It hadn't looked like violence. It had looked like guidance. Like Bruce had simply helped the man fall down. Then the second surfer, the bearded one, exploded into motion. What the hell, man? You sucker punched him! He swung wildly at Bruce, a haymaker coming from the side, fueled by anger and adrenaline. Bruce ducked under it effortlessly, and as the bearded surfer's arm passed over his head, Bruce stepped in close inside the man's reach and drove his shoulder into the surfer's ribs. Not a punch. A shoulder check. But it lifted the 200-pound surfer off his feet and sent him sprawling backward into the sand, gasping for air. 2 down in under 5 seconds. The remaining 3 exchanged glances. The young freckled surfer backed away, hands raised. I'm good, man. I'm not doing this. But the other 2 came forward together, trying to use their numbers advantage. It was smart strategy. You can't fight 2 people at once, so they'd force Bruce to choose. Except Bruce didn't try to fight them both. He used them against each other. As they approached from different angles, Bruce suddenly stepped back into the side, positioning himself so that both attackers were running toward the same point. They collided in a tangle of arms and legs, their coordination destroyed by their own momentum. As they tried to separate, Bruce moved again. A quick sidekick to the first surfer's knee, not to break it, but to buckle it, dropping the man to one knee. Then a palm strike to the second surfer's solar plexus, perfectly centered, driving the air from his lungs and dropping him to a sitting position in the sand. 4 down. Total elapsed time maybe 14 seconds. The freckled surfer was still standing, but he'd backed up several more steps. I'm out, man. I'm totally out. Bruce nodded at him. Smart choice. The leader was getting up now, spitting sand and looking dazed. The bearded surfer was still trying to catch his breath. The other 2 were conscious but clearly shaken. Bruce walked over to the leader and extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, the surfer took it and allowed Bruce to pull him to his feet. You okay? Bruce asked genuinely. The surfer nodded, though he was still clearly confused. What? What did you do to me? That didn't feel like getting hit. It felt like getting, I don't know, redirected. That's exactly what happened? Bruce said. You threw a punch with force and aggression. I simply redirected that force back through your own body. You essentially knocked yourself down. The bearded surfer was sitting up now, rubbing his ribs. Man, that shoulder thing. I've been hit before, but that was different. It was like you hit me from the inside out. Force doesn't always have to be hard to be effective, Bruce explained. Sometimes the softest touch, applied at exactly the right moment and place, can have more impact than the hardest blow. The surfer who'd taken the knee strike was stretching his leg, testing it. Dude, how is my knee not broken? I felt it buckle, but it's fine. Bruce knelt down beside him. Because I didn't want to break it. I struck a nerve point that temporarily disrupted the signals between your brain and your leg muscles. No damage, just temporary interference. The man stared at him. You could have broken it if you wanted to. Anyone can break a knee if they know where and how to hit it, Bruce said quietly. But knowing how to break something and choosing to break something are very different things. The leader was brushing sand from his wet suit, his earlier cockiness completely gone. I don't understand. We came at you 5 against 1, and you barely seemed to try. How is that possible? Bruce sat down in the sand, gesturing for them to join him. After a moment's hesitation, they did, all 5 of them, forming a circle around him like students around a teacher. Can I ask you something? Bruce said to the leader. When you're out there surfing, do you fight the waves? The surfer looked confused. Fight them? No. Man, you can't fight the ocean, you'd lose every time. So what do? You raid them. Feel their energy. Work with them, not against them. Bruce nodded. Exactly. You don't try to overpower a wave. You understand it, position yourself correctly, and use its own force to carry you where you want to go. The bearded surfer leaned forward. Are you saying fighting is like surfing? I'm saying everything is like everything else if you understand the underlying principles. Water is water, whether it's in the ocean or in a human body. Force is force, whether it's coming from a wave or from a fist. The principles are the same. The young freckled surfer spoke up. So when we attacked you, you were like, surfing our attacks. Bruce smiled for the first time since the confrontation began. That's actually a perfect way to put it. I wasn't fighting your force. I was reading it, redirecting it, using it. The leader shook his head in amazement. But we're bigger than you. Stronger. How do you overcome that? Do you overcome a wave by being bigger than it? Bruce asked. No. You overcome it by being smarter than it. By understanding it better than it understands itself. There you go. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the actual surfers out in the water, waiting for sets. The bearded surfer finally spoke. Can I ask you something personal? Bruce nodded. Were you scared when we came at you? I mean, 5 against 1. Bruce was quiet for a long moment. Terrified, he said finally. That surprised them. The leader said, but you're Bruce Lee. I'm human? Bruce interrupted. Being skilled doesn't mean you stop feeling fear. Fear is natural. It's information. It tells you something important is happening, that you need to be alert, present, aware. The question isn't whether you feel fear. The question is what you do with it. What do you do with it? The young surfer asked. I acknowledge it. I don't try to suppress it or ignore it. I feel it, understand what it's telling me, and then I act anyway. Fear can make you sharp if you let it. Or it can paralyze you if you fight it. The surfer who'd taken the palm strike rubbed his chest. You know what's weird? I don't even feel angry about what happened. I should be embarrassed or pissed off, but I'm not. I'm just, I don't know. Curious, I guess. That's because I wasn't trying to hurt you, Bruce said. I was trying to end the situation as quickly and safely as possible. For all of us. If I'd wanted to hurt you, this would have gone very differently. The leader looked thoughtful. So all that stuff in your movies about martial arts being a way of life, not just fighting techniques. It's real, Bruce said. Maybe the most real part. The physical techniques are just tools, but the philosophy, the discipline, the self-control, that's what actually matters. That's what changes you. Can you teach us? The young surfer asked suddenly. Bruce laughed softly. You already know it. You just don't realize it yet. Every time you paddle out into heavy surf, you're practicing martial arts. You're reading forces, positioning yourself, using timing instead of strength. working with power instead of against it. The bearded surfer nodded slowly. I never thought of it that way. The ocean has been your teacher all along, Bruce said. I just showed you how to apply those same lessons on land. They talked for another hour as the sun moved lower in the sky. Bruce answered their questions about training, about philosophy, about the difference between movie fighting and real fighting. He was patient, thoughtful, treating their curiosity with respect. Finally, as the afternoon light began to fade, the leader stood up. We should get going, he said, but thank you for not really hurting us, and for talking to us instead of just, I don't know. Bruce stood too. Thank you for being willing to listen. Most people can't do that after their ego takes a hit. The surfer laughed. Man, my ego didn't just take a hit. It got completely destroyed. Good, Bruce said. Ego is the enemy of learning. You can rebuild it later, stronger, based on something real instead of something imagined. They shook hands, all of them. Even the guys who'd been on the receiving end of Bruce's techniques seemed to hold no grudge. If anything, they seemed grateful. As they walked away, boards under their arms, the leader turned back one last time. Hey, Bruce, that thing you said about being like water. I think I get it now, Bruce smiled. Good. Hold on to that. We watched them disappear down the beach, their silhouettes growing smaller against the setting sun. The families had gone home. The other beachgoers had drifted away. It was just us and the ocean again. That was incredible, I told Bruce. The way you handled that. I've never seen anything like it. He sat back down in the sand, picked up a handful, and let it run through his fingers. It wasn't about being incredible, he said quietly. It was about being appropriate. Still 5 guys, 14 seconds. He smiled slightly. 13. But who's counting? The smile faded, and he looked out at the water. You know what the sad part is, he said. Those guys came here looking for a fight because they thought that's what strength was. Aggression, dominance, proving you're tougher than someone else. And our whole culture reinforces that. Movies, sports, everything tells men that's what it means to be strong. But you showed them different. Maybe, I hope so. He paused. Real strength isn't about dominating others, it's about controlling yourself. Knowing when to act and when not to. Having the power to hurt someone and choosing not to. That's what separates a martial artist from a fighter. That's what separates wisdom from ego. The sun was touching the horizon now, painting everything gold and orange. Bruce closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Think they learned something today? I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. I think they learned that what they thought they knew about strength was wrong. Whether they remember that lesson, whether they apply it, that's up to them. I can only plant seeds. I can't make them grow. We sat there as the sun disappeared, as the beach emptied, as the day turned to dusk. Bruce never mentioned the incident again. Not that day, not ever. For him, it was already in the past. Just another moment, another opportunity to express what he believed, to live what he taught. But I never forgot it. How 5 men came looking for a fight and left with a lesson. How violence was avoided even when it seemed inevitable. How the strongest person on that beach was the one who never wanted to prove it. That was Bruce Lee. Not the legend, not the movie star. Just a man who understood that real power doesn't need to shout. It whispers. And sometimes if you're really listening, you can hear it change everything. Years later, I heard through mutual friends that the leader of that group, the big surfer who'd challenged Bruce, had started studying martial arts. Not to become a fighter, but to understand what he'd experienced that day on the beach. He never became a master, never opened a school, never made it his life's work. But he learned to be water. The aftermath, the drive back to Los Angeles, was different from our trip up the coast. Where the morning had been silent with Bruce's need for escape, the evening was quiet with contemplation. The events on the beach had stirred something in both of us, something about the nature of conflict, about what it means to be truly powerful in a world that mistakes volume for strength. You know what bothers me most about what happened back there? Bruce said as we wound through the hills overlooking the Pacific. It's that those guys felt they had to test me in the first place. I glanced over at him, his profile lit by the dashboard glow. What do you mean? They came at me because they thought strength was something you take from others. Like there's only so much to go around, and if you're strong, it somehow makes them weak. He shook his head. But real strength doesn't work that way. It multiplies when shared, grows when given away. I thought about what I'd witnessed: 5 men who'd approached with aggression and left with respect, even gratitude. They seemed to understand that by the end. Maybe. I hope so. Bruce was quiet for a moment. The tragedy is how many people go their whole lives believing that power comes from dominating others. They never discover that the greatest strength is the ability to lift others up instead of tearing them down. The headlights carved through the gathering darkness as we descended toward the city. In the distance, the lights of Los Angeles spread out like a constellation, millions of people pursuing their own version of power, success, recognition. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "When that first guy threw his punch, what were you actually thinking?" In that moment, Bruce smiled slightly. "I was thinking about my teacher, Ep Man. There's something he used to say: the best fighter is never the one who throws the first punch, or even the last one. The best fighter is the one who ends the conflict before it truly begins." But the conflict had already begun. "They were challenging you." "No," Bruce said firmly. "They were challenging who they thought I was. Once I showed them who I actually was, the conflict dissolved. The real battle wasn't physical, it was between their assumptions and reality." I found myself thinking about the moment when Bruce had offered his hand to help the lead surfer up from the sand. There had been no triumph in his face, no satisfaction at having proven his point. Just genuine concern for another human being who had gotten in over his head. "What would you have done if they hadn't been willing to listen afterward?" I asked. "If they'd just gotten angry and tried again?" Bruce considered this carefully. "Then I would have done what was necessary to protect both of us. But the goal would still have been the same: to end the situation with the minimum amount of harm possible. Even if it meant you got hurt. Getting hurt isn't the worst thing that can happen to you," he said quietly. "Hurting others unnecessarily, that's much worse. That's something you carry forever." I realized then that what I'd witnessed on the beach wasn't just a demonstration of martial arts technique. It was a masterclass in what Bruce would later call Jeet Kune, not just the way of the intercepting fist, but the way of intercepting conflict itself before it could escalate to genuine violence. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Bruce continued. "That young kid, the one who backed away. He was the smartest one there. He recognized a situation he didn't want to be part of and chose not to participate. That takes real courage, admitting when you're out of your depth. Most people would call that cowardice." "Most people confuse cowardice with wisdom," Bruce replied. "There's no shame in avoiding unnecessary conflict. The shame is in creating conflict where none needs to exist." As we pulled into Bruce's driveway in Bel Air, the contrast between his beach retreat and his Hollywood life became stark. The house was magnificent, a symbol of his success, but also a fortress against the constant demands of fame. Here, he was Bruce Lee, the movie star. On the beach, he had just been Bruce, a man who understood the ocean's lessons about power and flow. "Thank you for coming with me today," he said as we sat in the car for a moment before going inside. I needed a witness to what happened. Not because I doubted myself, but because I knew nobody would believe it otherwise. "Will you tell Linda about it?" Bruce shook his head. "She worries enough about the risks of what I do. She doesn't need to know about confrontations that could have gone badly. But someday, maybe when I'm old and gray, and my fighting days are long behind me, I'll tell her the story. I'll tell her about the day I fought 5 men by not fighting them at all." But of course, Bruce never got the chance to grow old and gray. 3 years later, he would be gone, taken from us at the peak of his powers by circumstances that still remain mysterious. The story of that day on the beach would remain our secret, locked away with so many other moments that revealed the true depth of his character. I often wonder what Bruce would think about how martial arts have evolved since his death. About mixed martial arts. About cage fighting. About the way competition and commerce have shaped the art he loved so deeply. Would he recognize the principles he fought to preserve, or would he see them lost in the pursuit of spectacle and profit? What I know is this: on that beach in 1972, Bruce Lee demonstrated something far more valuable than fighting technique. He showed that true mastery isn't about what you can do to others. It's about what you choose not to do. He proved that strength without compassion is just brutality, and that the highest expression of martial skill is the ability to resolve conflict without causing unnecessary harm. The 5 surfers who cornered him that day, thinking they'd expose a fraud, instead discovered a teacher. They came looking for a fight and found wisdom. They expected to witness the breakdown of a Hollywood myth, and instead saw the birth of their own understanding about what it means to be truly powerful. In those 14 seconds of action and the hour of conversation that followed, Bruce Lee did more than defend himself. He transformed 5 skeptics into students, 5 adversaries into allies, 5 men who thought they understood strength into 5 men who began to understand themselves. That's the real story of what happened on that beach. Not a fight, but a lesson. Not a victory, but a transformation. Not the end of a challenge, but the beginning of understanding. And somewhere out there, probably still riding waves and approaching them with the wisdom water taught him decades ago, is a surfer who learned that the most powerful force isn't the one that crashes loudest, but the one that flows deepest. Bruce would have liked that.